I was 12 when my world turned upside down. That morning started like any other. Dad kissed me goodbye before heading to work at the construction company where he was a site manager. Mom barely looked up from her phone as he left. I remember thinking how strange it was that they used to be so different with each other. My name is Melanie Carter, and that was the last time I saw my father alive. He collapsed at work that afternoon, a massive heart attack, they said. I was in math class when the principal called me to her office. Mom was already there, her mascara perfectly intact despite the news she'd just received. Your father's gone, Melanie, she said, her voice steady. Too steady. I broke down crying, but Mom just sat there, patting my back mechanically. That evening, I overheard her on the phone with her friend Linda. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Mom's voice carried through the thin walls of our suburban home. Actually, Linda, this might be for the best, she said, her voice low but clear. Being a widow is much more respectable than being divorced. Plus, I get to keep everything without the hassle of lawyers. She laughed, actually laughed. I know. I'll play the grieving widow at the funeral. I've already picked out the perfect black dress. I sat on the stairs, my hand pressed against my mouth to keep from screaming. Dad's sister, Aunt Sarah, was the only one who seemed to see through Mom's act at the funeral. While everyone else was offering condolences to my devastated mother, Aunt Sarah just stood there, shaking her head sadly. She knew. She'd always known how Mom treated Dad. It didn't take Mom long to heal from her loss. Within 3 months, she started having a man over for dinner. His name was Richard Thompson, and he had 2 kids from his previous marriage, Brandon, who was 11, and Emma, who was 10. Mom would cook elaborate meals when they visited, something she'd never done for Dad. Melanie, honey, Mom said one evening, her voice syrupy sweet. Richard and I have something to tell you. I knew what was coming. The way they sat together on the couch, holding hands, Mom beaming like a teenager, it was obvious. We're getting married, Mom announced. Isn't it wonderful? You'll have a new father and siblings. I forced a smile, but inside, my stomach was turning. That's great, Mom. Congratulations. Richard smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. Brandon and Emma are so excited to have a new sister, he said, but I'd seen how his kids looked at me during their visits, like I was something stuck to the bottom of their expensive sneakers. That night, I called Aunt Sarah and cried for hours. She listened patiently, then said something I'll never forget. Sometimes, sweetie, the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Remember that. Brandon and Emma moved in the week after the honeymoon. They immediately claimed the best rooms in the house, including my playroom, which became Emma's art studio. When I tried to protest, Mom just said, "Don't be selfish, Melanie. We need to make them feel welcome." Mom transformed into a completely different person after marrying Richard. She'd spend hours helping Emma with her homework or watching Brandon's soccer practice, while I ate dinner alone in my room. The way she looked at Richard, it was like he hung the moon and stars just for her. I'd never seen her look at Dad that way. Brandon needs new cleats for soccer, she'd say, or Emma's taking art classes this summer. There was always money for what they needed. Meanwhile, I learned to stop asking for anything. Even basic things like new school supplies came with sighs and eye rolls, as if I was being unreasonable for needing pencils. They started taking trips together, nothing fancy, just weekend getaways to nearby cities or camping trips to state parks. But I was never invited. You'll just be bored, Mom would say, not even looking at me as she packed snacks for Brandon and Emma. Besides, someone needs to feed the cat. I'd end up at Aunt Sarah's house during these trips. Her small cottage became more of a home to me than our house ever was. She never had kids of her own, but she treated me like the daughter she never had. This isn't right, Melanie, she'd say, watching me unpack my overnight bag for what felt like the 100th time. A mother shouldn't play favorites like this. I shrugged, trying to act like it didn't hurt. At least I have you, Aunt Sarah. One evening, when I was 16, I decided to bring up college during dinner. I'd been researching schools, dreaming about studying business management. "Mom," I said, carefully choosing my moment when everyone was in a good mood. I wanted to talk about college applications. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "College? Melanie, we can't afford to send you to college. We need to think about Brandon and Emma's education." Brandon smirked across the table, and Emma didn't even try to hide her satisfied grin. Richard just kept eating, as if the conversation didn't concern him at all. Later that night, I cornered Mom in the kitchen. "What about Dad's money?" I asked. "He had life insurance, and he'd been saving for years." Mom's face hardened. "I've spent that money taking care of you for the past 4 years," she snapped. "Food, clothes, shelter, did you think all that was free? Stop being so arrogant, Melanie. You can't just demand things from me." I stood there, stunned by her cold tone and the obvious lie in her words. Dad had worked hard to save for my future, and now it was all gone, spent on her new perfect family while I watched from the sidelines. The next weekend, I went to Aunt Sarah's house, with tears still burning in my eyes. We sat at her kitchen table, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air, as I told her everything about Mom's cruel dismissal of my college dreams. Aunt Sarah listened quietly, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. When I finished, she got up without a word and disappeared into her study. I heard drawers opening and closing, then she returned with a thick envelope. "Your father came to see me about 2 weeks before he died," she said, sliding the envelope across the table. "It was strange, he seemed worried, almost like he knew something was going to happen. He gave me this and made me promise to keep it safe until you were ready for college." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a bank statement showing a substantial savings account in my name, with Aunt Sarah as the trustee. Dad had been secretly putting money aside for years. "He said your mother had been acting different," Aunt Sarah explained, her voice soft. "He wanted to make sure your future was secure, no matter what happened. The money's been gathering interest all these years." I burst into tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude and love for my father, who'd protected me even after he was gone. "We can't tell Mom about this," I said, wiping my eyes. Aunt Sarah nodded in agreement. Over the next 2 years, I focused on my studies while keeping quiet about my college plans. Brandon and Emma took every opportunity to remind me of my supposed future. "Hey, Melanie," Brandon would sneer in the hallway, "I heard the diner downtown needs a dishwasher. Better get your application in early." Emma would join in, "Maybe if you're lucky, they'll let you bus tables too." They'd laugh like it was the funniest joke in the world. I just walked past them, my silence driving them crazy. Then came graduation day. I'd barely taken off my cap and gown when Mom and Richard called me into the living room for a serious discussion. They sat on the couch like judges about to pass sentence, while I stood before them. "Melanie," Richard began, his voice stern, "you're 18 now. We've been generous, but you need to understand that you can't live here forever. You need to find a job and start earning your own living." I smiled calmly. "I understand completely. I'll be moved out by next week." They exchanged surprised looks. Clearly, they'd expected resistance or tears. Mom opened her mouth like she was going to say something, then closed it again. "Well, good," Richard finally managed. "That's very mature of you." Neither of them asked where I planned to go or how I would support myself. They were too relieved that I'd agreed so easily to risk asking questions that might complicate things. Moving day arrived faster than I expected. I packed my life into 4 cardboard boxes and 2 suitcases. It was surprising how little I'd accumulated over the years, almost like I'd been subconsciously preparing for this moment all along. Aunt Sarah pulled up in her blue Honda at exactly 9 in the morning. I watched through my bedroom window as she parked, half expecting Mom or someone else to come see what was happening. But the house remained silent, even though I could see movement behind the curtains of Emma's room. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home shrink in the side mirror until it disappeared completely. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt lighter with each mile we put between us and that house of carefully crafted pretenses. I spent that summer working at the Sunshine Cafe, serving coffee and sandwiches to regulars who always tipped well and treated me like family. The owner, Mrs. Peterson, even let me pick up extra shifts when I wanted to save more for college expenses. September came, and I boarded a plane to start my new life at Marshall State University, 3 states away from everything I'd known. The business management program was challenging, but I threw myself into it completely. My roommate, Jessica, became my first real friend since middle school. She didn't know my whole story at first, but when she did learn about it, she just hugged me and said, "Their loss, girl, their loss." Mom's Facebook page became my window into the life I'd left behind. There they were, the perfect family, smiling at Brandon's soccer tournaments, celebrating Emma's art show victories, taking vacation selfies at the beach. The captions always read like marketing copy, "So proud of our amazing kids," or "Nothing better than family time." I was never mentioned, not even once. It was like I'd never existed. Holidays were spent at Aunt Sarah's, cooking together and watching old movies. We created our own traditions, and they meant more to me than any forced family dinner ever had. Sometimes she'd catch me looking at Mom's social media posts and gently take my phone away. "Don't torture yourself," she'd say. "You're making your own story now." And I was. I graduated summa cum laude, with job offers already lined up thanks to my internships and academic performance. Jessica's father, Mr. Reynolds, ran a major marketing firm, and he'd noticed my work during a class project showcase. "We need sharp minds like yours," he said during my interview. "Your professors speak very highly of you." I started in the junior analyst position, but I wasn't content to stay there. I worked late, took on extra projects, and studied market trends in my free time. Within 5 years, I'd been promoted twice and had enough savings for a down payment on my own apartment. The day I signed the mortgage papers, I stood in my empty living room, keys in hand, and finally let myself cry. They were happy tears, tears of pride, of accomplishment, of knowing that I'd made it on my own terms. Then came the biggest surprise. Mr. Reynolds called me into his office one morning, about 7 years after I'd started at the company. "We're creating a new position," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Senior Director of Strategic Development. The board and I agree you're the right person for the job." I opened the folder and nearly gasped at the salary figure. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making, especially at my age. I never saw the point in broadcasting my life online. Sure, I had social media accounts, but I mostly used them to share occasional photos of sunsets or coffee shops. Aunt Sarah was the only one who knew about my promotions, my new apartment, or the sleek black Mercedes I'd bought myself as a reward for landing the director position. "You've earned every bit of it," she'd say proudly whenever I shared my achievements with her. Meanwhile, Brandon and Emma's social media feeds were like endless highlight reels of mediocrity. Brandon would pose next to his used Hyundai Elantra with captions like "Living the Dream," "Blessed," "Luxury Life," while Emma shared photos of herself at the local mall, tagging designer brands she clearly couldn't afford. One post particularly made me laugh, Brandon standing next to his car at some local car show, writing, "When hard work pays off. Success, entrepreneur." I was reading this while sitting in my Mercedes AMG, worth more than his annual salary, but I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Then came the message that changed everything. It popped up on my Facebook one Tuesday morning. "Melanie, it's your mother. My 55th birthday is coming up next month, and I'm having a celebration at an expensive restaurant, Le Blanc. You've probably never heard of it. I expect you to attend. It's on the 15th, 7 p.m. sharp. Don't embarrass me." I stared at the screen, reading the message multiple times. 12 years of silence, and this was how she reached out? "No, how are you?" No attempt to bridge the gap. Just a command to appear at her party, with that subtle dig about the restaurant's price point. I almost deleted the message right there. But something stopped me, curiosity, maybe, or the desire to see what would happen. I called Mr. Reynolds and requested a week off, then booked a flight to my hometown. That evening, over tea in her cozy kitchen, Aunt Sarah asked the question I'd been pondering myself: "What are you planning to give her?" I smiled, pulling out my phone to show her the confirmation email. A luxury vacation package to the Maldives. 2 weeks at a 5-star resort, first-class flights included. Worth about $15,000. Aunt Sarah's eyes widened. "Melanie, that's too much. She doesn't deserve it." "Oh, I know she doesn't," I laughed, taking a sip of tea. "But can you imagine her face when she realizes what she's been missing all these years?" The daughter she threw away turned out to be more successful than she could have imagined. I want to see her reaction when she realizes just how wrong she was about me. "You're a little bit evil," Aunt Sarah chuckled, shaking her head. "I love it." The evening of Mom's birthday, I slipped on my Chanel dress, elegant in its simplicity, with a price tag that could have bought 10 of the flashy outfits I spotted later that night. I deliberately took a taxi to the restaurant, amused by how this would play into their assumptions about my life. Le Blanc turned out to be exactly what I expected, the kind of place that impressed people who'd never eaten at a truly high-end restaurant. The kind of place that served frozen seafood but put gold leaf on the desserts. I'd had business dinners at places that made this look like a diner. The hostess led me to a private room where the party was already in full swing. Mom sat at the head of the table, wearing a sequin dress that sparkled under the chandelier. Richard was beside her, and Brandon and Emma flanked them like royal heirs. The rest of the seats were filled with relatives I hadn't seen in over a decade: Aunt Linda, who used to pinch my cheeks too hard, Cousin Rachel, who always bragged about her kids, and various other faces from my past. Mom's eyes barely flickered over me before her lip curled slightly. "Oh, Melanie, you came. You could have dressed up a bit more for the occasion." I took my seat at the far end of the table, watching the show unfold. Aunt Linda gave Mom a scented candle set. "It's from that nice shop at the mall," she explained proudly. Mom cooed over it like it was diamonds. Cousin Rachel presented a gift card to a local spa. "For a day of pampering," she announced. More excited squeals from Mom. The gifts continued: a cookbook, a decorative vase, a basket of bath products. Mom treated each one like a precious treasure, making sure to emphasize how thoughtful and perfect each gift was. Then came Brandon and Emma's moment. They stood up together, grinning like they'd just won the lottery. "Mom," Brandon said, and it still felt wrong hearing him call her that, "Emma and I pooled our money to get you something special." Emma pulled out her phone and showed a photo. "It's a 65-inch smart TV. We already had it delivered and mounted in your living room." Mom burst into tears, pulling them both into a tight hug. "My wonderful, generous children. I can't believe you did this. You must have saved for months." Finally, all eyes turned to me. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box. Mom's expression darkened immediately. "What's this supposed to be?" "Open it and see," I suggested quietly. But she didn't. Instead, her face turned red with anger. "This is exactly what I expected from you," she spat. "You show up here in that plain dress, probably the only nice thing you own. You take a taxi because you can't afford a car. And now you give me this tiny box? What could possibly be in here that's worth giving? A gift card to McDonald's?" She threw the box back at me. It skidded across the table, leaving a scratch in the cheap veneer. Brandon and Emma snickered behind their hands. Some guests looked uncomfortable, others seemed to be enjoying the drama. Richard just kept eating his dessert as if nothing was happening. I picked up the box calmly, brushing off the tablecloth crumbs that had stuck to its elegant wrapping. The room had gone quiet, waiting to see what I would do next. "You know what's funny, Mom?" I said, my voice steady. "In this little box is a receipt for a 2-week luxury vacation to the Maldives. First-class flights, 5-star resort, everything included. Worth $15,000. The color drained from her face. Emma dropped her fork with a clatter. That's That's impossible, Mom stammered. You couldn't afford something like that. You're obviously lying. I couldn't help but laugh. You'd know whether I could afford it or not if you'd shown any interest in my life these past 12 years. But let me catch you up, I'm a senior director at Reynolds Marketing Group. I own my apartment in the city. And that taxi you mocked? I took it because I didn't want to leave my Mercedes parked in this neighborhood. Brandon's mouth hung open. Emma had stopped giggling. But since you're so convinced I'm a loser, I continued, tucking the box back into my purse, and you clearly don't want anything from me, I won't spoil your birthday any further. Enjoy your TV, I hear the resolution is almost as good as the one in my home theater. I walked out with my head high, the click of my heels echoing in the sudden silence. The maitre d' called a taxi, and I headed straight to Aunt Sarah's house. She was waiting up for me, 2 cups of tea already steaming on the coffee table. I told her everything that had happened. Some people never change, she sighed, shaking her head. Your mother's always been more interested in appearances than reality. We were still talking when my phone started ringing. An unknown number, but I knew who it was. Melanie, sweetheart. Mom's voice dripped with honey, I do not know where she got my number. I've been thinking about what happened. Have you? I replied coolly. Yes, and I realize now that I may have been hasty. If you're still willing to give me that gift, I'd love to accept it. We could use this as a fresh start. I want to be part of your life again. We're family. No, I said, finally understanding something. We're not family. We're just people who share DNA. And you didn't want to restore our relationship, you just want that vacation package. I hung up. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing after I left town. Mom called from different numbers, her cell, the house phone, even Richard's phone. When she realized I wouldn't pick up, the messages started flooding in. Melanie, please call me back. We need to talk about this. I've been thinking about what you said about your job. Maybe you could help Brandon get started in marketing? He's very creative. Emma's been saying she'd love to intern at a big company like yours. It would look so good on her college applications. The house needs some repairs, and since you're doing so well. Each message was more transparent than the last. No apologies, no acknowledgement of the past, just an endless stream of requests and hints about my money. It was like watching a desperate gambler trying to win back losses, except what Mom had lost wasn't money, it was her relationship with her daughter. I read each message with a strange detachment, like I was studying a case study for work. The tactics were almost impressive in their variety: guilt, I'm your mother, how can you ignore me? Flattery, you've become such a successful woman, manipulation, family should help family, and even threats, I'll tell everyone how you abandoned your mother. Your mother's been calling me nonstop, Aunt Sarah told me over the phone a week after I'd returned home. She showed up at my house today, if you can believe it. Demanded I give her your address. What did you tell her? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I told her to get off my property before I called the police, Aunt Sarah chuckled. You should have seen her face. She kept saying she had a right to know where her daughter lives. I reminded her that she gave up that right years ago. I could picture Mom standing on Aunt Sarah's porch, probably wearing one of her expensive outfits, trying to bully her way into getting what she wanted. It was the same pattern I'd watched my whole life, but now I could see it clearly for what it was. She didn't take it well, Aunt Sarah continued. Started ranting about how ungrateful we both were, how she'd sacrificed everything for you. The neighbors probably heard everything. When she finally realized I wasn't going to give in, she stormed off to her car. But Melanie, be careful. She seemed desperate. I already blocked her on everything, I assured Aunt Sarah. Social media, phone, email, everything. And security at my office knows not to let her in if she shows up. After we hung up, I walked through my apartment, looking at everything I'd built for myself. The modern furniture I'd chosen, the art on the walls, the view of the city from my windows, all of it earned through my own hard work. I thought about Mom's messages, about her sudden interest in my life now that she knew I had money. In the end, it was almost funny. She'd thrown away a relationship with her daughter for the appearance of a perfect family, and now she was desperate to get back into my life for the appearance of success. But she'd taught me one valuable lesson: family isn't about legal documents. It's about love, support, and being there for each other through good times and bad. I had that with Aunt Sarah. The next morning, I called the travel agency and changed the name on the Maldives vacation package to Sarah Carter. When I told my aunt, she tried to refuse, but I insisted. "You deserve this more than she ever did," I said. "You've been more of a mother to me than she ever was." Aunt Sarah hugged me tight, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged.
Hey, I'm Tanya, a 37-year-old woman happily married to the love of my life, Jim. Let me tell you a story about how my in-laws, Nina and Hank, underestimated me and my amazing parents, and how we turned the tables on them in the most satisfying way possible. My family had money, but we didn't show it off. We believed in working hard and staying humble. My parents taught me that money shouldn't be relied upon. It's more important to be determined and have good qualities. These lessons helped me when dealing with Jim's family, especially his mom, Nina. At first, Nina treated me badly and always made mean comments at my expense. But I stayed strong and confident because I knew my value wasn't just about money. I loved Jim a lot and wanted to prove that I deserved his love, no matter how much money I had. One time, however, I got overwhelmed by Nina's remarks and confided in Jim about it. "I need to talk to you about something," I said. "What's going on, darling? Is everything okay?" Jim asked. "It's just that I feel upset with how your mom treats me. It's like she thinks I'm not good enough because I don't come from wealth." I was waiting for this to come up, Jim admitted. "If I'm being completely honest, my mom has this strange way of trying to make sure I find the right girlfriend. She's overprotective and doesn't want anyone using me for my money. She always insisted on me finding someone with the same social standing as us. But believe me, I don't care about that stuff. It's just not fair. Shouldn't she see me for who I am, not how much money I come from? Love should be about understanding, not wealth." I completely agree. Love should be about understanding. My mom is stubborn, but I'm holding out hope that she'll change. "Don't worry about a word she says. She'll never change how I feel and think about you, my darling. I love you no matter what she thinks." "I love you too, baby. You're the only reason I'm saying." It's not easy to deal with her. I hope she realizes our love is real, not about money. I felt a mix of relief, love, and a tinge of sadness. I was relieved that Jim understood my frustrations and stood by my side. His unwavering support gave me strength. Yet there was a hint of sadness knowing that his mother's judgment and expectations might continue to affect our relationship. Nina didn't just treat me badly, she also looked down on my parents. When our families met to plan the wedding at Jim and my house, Nina and Hank kept saying mean things about my parents. They made rude comments about where my parents came from and acted like they were better than them. It made me and Jim mad, but my parents handled it well. Even though Nina and Hank tried to put my parents down, they stayed calm and strong. They didn't let Nina and Hank's words bother them. They stayed cool and didn't act mean back. Nina and Hank thought my parents were being distant and acting better than them, which made Jim's parents dislike my parents even more. They thought my parents were too proud and snobby. At the wedding itself, Nina tried to strike up a conversation with my mother, Rita. "Oh, Rita, you look lovely," Nina said. "Thank you, Nina. So do you," my mother replied. "Your daughter is quite lucky, isn't she?" Nina continued. "That she is. She's marrying the man she loves, and I'm so happy for her," my mother said. "Of course, marrying a rich man like Jim must be such a dream come true for her. Are you jealous?" "Jealous? Why would I be? Wealth doesn't define a person. It's not something I care about. Of course, when you don't have a lot of money, you have to focus on personality, right? I hope you're secretly jealous of Tanya. No need to hide it. Admit it. I won't tell anyone. I promise." "I have no reason to be jealous, Nina. What matters to me is that my daughter is marrying a man who will always stand by her side, even if it's against his disrespectful parents." In that moment, my mother showed Nana what true class and strength looked like, and I couldn't have been prouder. That's something to be proud of. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other things to attend to, Rita said calmly. Nina felt shocked and embarrassed as Rita confidently walked away, leaving her at a loss for words. This encounter only deepened Nina's resentment towards Rita, fueling her dislike for my mother even more. After we got married, I decided to tell Jim about my family's wealth. I was nervous about how he would react, so I sat him down one night and told him everything. Is everything okay, darling? Why so serious? Jim asked. Okay, so I've kind of been keeping a huge secret from you, I confessed. Oh, what is it? Well, I'm actually from a similar background as you. What do you mean? My dad is the highest chairman of a big company in the same industry as your dad. Wait, what? Are you serious? I know it's surprising. My parents always taught me to be humble and not to rely on our wealth, so I didn't think it was necessary to mention it. I can't believe you never told me about this before. I mean, it wouldn't have changed anything, and it still doesn't. It's just shocking. Well, yeah. I figured you'd find out one way or another, and I would rather you find out from me right now than later by someone else. Once the surprise sank in, Jim burst out laughing. I was confused at first, not sure why he found it so funny. I don't get it. Why are you laughing? I asked. It's just so ironic, darling. I'm laughing because of how my parents treated you when we were dating. If they had known about your family's wealth, they would have treated you like royalty. It's really stupid, isn't it? I never understood why your parents needed to know about it to treat me with respect. Exactly. I love you for who you are, not for your family's wealth. You've always been there for me, and that's what matters. We've built our relationship on trust and support, not material possessions. Laughing together brought us even closer. We realized that our love went beyond money and status. We were grateful for each other's love and support, which meant more than any amount of money. It was a special moment for us, understanding that our connection was based on genuine feelings and shared values, not just superficial things. Over the years, Jim and I grew even closer in our relationship. We both landed high-ranking, well-paying jobs that provided us with a comfortable and happy life. We had to move to a different state because of work, but it also served as a way to distance ourselves from Jim's toxic parents. Whenever we returned to our home state, we made sure to meet Jim's parents and my parents separately. I couldn't bear to see my parents being talked down to by Nina and Hank. Protecting my parents' dignity was important to me, so we took steps to ensure they were spared from any more of their condescending remarks. One day, my mom, Rita, called with great news. She said she was organizing a big charity event next month and asked if Jim and I would come. I was super excited and said yes right away. My mom was known for throwing awesome parties, and I couldn't wait to be part of this special event. It had been a while since she organized something, and I knew it would be a big hit. A few days later, Jim's mom, Nina, called him. She told him about the same charity event and insisted that we had to be there. Little did she know that we were already invited by my parents. Jim didn't say anything and just agreed to his mom's request. We found it funny how things worked out. It seemed like fate brought both our families to the same event without them knowing. As the days went by, Jim and I felt a mix of excitement and curiosity. We wondered what would happen when our families finally met at the event. We knew there was tension between them, but we hoped this could be a chance for them to put their differences aside and enjoy themselves. Despite the potential for drama, I was determined to make the most of the event and support my mom's charity. I focused on the positive and got ready for a special night filled with elegance, helping others, and hopefully a better understanding between our families. The next few weeks flew by, and before we knew it, Jim and I were boarding our flights back home. When we arrived, Nina and Hank were there to greet us at the airport. Since I was earning a similar amount as Jim, Nina started treating me a little better. It wasn't that she was so nice to me, but she made fewer mean comments. I didn't like that it took me having a high-paying job for her to show some respect, but I was relieved not to deal with her usual remarks. That night, Jim and I stayed at his parents' house. We talked about how Nina and Hank would find out about my parents' wealth the next day. I can't believe tomorrow is the day your parents will finally find out about my family's wealth. I'm kind of nervous about how your parents will react, to be honest, I admitted. Yeah, it's going to be quite a revelation for them. I'm looking forward to seeing their reaction and confronting them about their behavior, Jim said. Me too. It's about time they realize that money doesn't define a person's worth. I'm glad you're standing up for me. You know I'll always have your back, darling. I love you. We're in this together. I love you too, babe. I can't wait to see their faces when they learn the truth. It's going to be an interesting day, that's for sure. We need to get as much sleep as we can. We're going to need it. Oh, absolutely. Good night, my love. The next evening, everyone got dressed up in fancy clothes for the event. Of course, Nana had to make a mean comment about my dress. But Jim stood up for me and told his mom that she had no right to say such things to his wife. When we arrived at the venue, I was amazed by how beautiful it looked. I made a mental note to compliment my mom when I saw her for organizing such a wonderful event. Nina and Hank went off to socialize with other people. Nina found her friend Maddie, and together they whispered and laughed while gossiping about everyone they saw. I saw my mother, Rita, from a distance, and my heart filled with joy. I quickly made my way over to her, Nina, wearing a scowl, followed behind me with Maddie trailing alongside her. I wanted to compliment my mother on her hard work organizing the event, but before I could even speak, Nina rudely questioned why my mom was there. "What are you doing here, Rita? This event is only for rich people," Nina sneered. "Well, I am part of the organizing team for this event," my mother replied calmly. "Oh, and what exactly do you do?" "I doubt it's anything important," Nina retorted. "Nina, please stop. That's enough," I intervened. "Well, if you don't do your job well, I'll make sure to complain to your boss and get you fired," Nina threatened. "Nina, shut up. What is your problem?" Maddie snapped. "Rita is the hostess for the entire party, Nina," Maddie continued. "What, her? The hostess? Have you lost your mind or something?" Nina scoffed. "Rita's husband is in a very high position, don't you know? She's the wife of the chairman of the company hosting the event. You've just made a fool of yourself," Maddie explained. "Whoa, what? Oh, I didn't know. Enjoy the party, Nana," I said, unable to hide my satisfaction. I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of triumph as I witnessed Nana's shock. Without saying a word, I left with my mom, feeling victorious and content. As we walked away from Nana, I couldn't help but smile. The night had only just begun, and it was already unforgettable. As the evening continued, I couldn't contain my excitement. I approached my mom with a smile. "Mom, I have to say, this place looks amazing. And the way you handled Nana's mean comments, you were incredible." "Thank you, sweetheart. But that's not all. I've got something else planned," my mom replied with a twinkle in her eye. "Really? What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued. "Well, your dad and I have grown tired of how Jim's parents treat us. So we came up with a little plan. Your dad is going to introduce himself to Hank in the most spectacular way ever. They need to know that having a bit more money doesn't make them royalty, am I right?" she said with a mischievous grin. "I'm beyond curious about your plan. What do you have in mind?" I asked eagerly. "Just wait and see, my dear. We're going to make a statement and give them payback for the way they treated us. I'm a bit scared about what you've planned, but at the same time, you're right. They need to be put in their place. I can't wait to see what happens," I replied, feeling a mix of anticipation and pride. Hearing my mom's words made me even more curious and eager to see what would happen next. I trusted her instincts and knew she had something clever planned. We were tired of being looked down on, and it was time to stand up for ourselves. I felt a surge of pride imagining my parents taking charge and proving to Nina and Hank that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their wealth. As the event continued, my excitement grew. This wasn't just a charity gathering. There was also an award ceremony to recognize the most generous and hard-working companies. Surprisingly, Hank's company was a top contender for the award, which made him even more arrogant, not realizing that my father Aaron held the deciding vote. When it was Aaron's turn to present the award, he stepped up and delivered a speech that caught everyone's attention. He talked about his conversations with the CEOs of various companies and mentioned one CEO's disrespectful attitude towards those who weren't as successful. Aaron couldn't support someone who treated others poorly, so he announced that the runner of company would receive the award instead. The crowd reacted with a mix of cheers and whispers. All eyes turned to Hank and Nina, who looked shocked and humiliated. Their arrogance had been exposed, and people could see the truth about their behavior. It was evident that wealth and status shouldn't be an excuse to treat others with disrespect. Feeling embarrassed, Hank and Nina decided to leave the event early. They couldn't face the crowd knowing that their true nature had been revealed. Meanwhile, Jim and I stayed until the end, proud of my parents for taking a stand against the belittling behavior. Upon returning to Nina and Hank's place, they immediately started shouting at me, demanding to know why I hadn't disclosed my parents' status. "Why didn't you tell us about your parents' status, Tanya? How dare you keep that from us?" Nina fumed. "I don't see why my parents' status matters to you," I replied calmly. "Of course it matters. You made us look like fools," she snapped. "I didn't do that at all. Your mentality did that," I responded firmly. "You're just trying to outshine us, aren't you? You want to show us how much higher you are. I told you, Jim, she was a waste of time. Look at how she's embarrassed your poor parents," Nina ranted. "That's enough, Mum. Tanya has done nothing wrong. Her family's wealth doesn't change who she is, and it certainly doesn't change how I feel about her. I will not allow you to belittle me or my family," Jim said, standing up for me. "Well, if you think you can rob us of our position, you're mistaken," Nina huffed. "We're not interested in taking anything from you, Mum. We're interested in being treated with respect and dignity. If you can't do that, then we won't stay here," Jim declared. At that moment, Jim and I decided that we had endured enough of their disrespect. We packed our bags and headed straight to my parents' house, seeking a loving and respectful environment where our value wasn't based on material possessions. As we settled into my parents' home, a sense of relief washed over us. We were greeted with open arms and genuine warmth. My parents never used their wealth against us. Instead, they showered us with love and acceptance. It was in their presence that we truly felt at home. Ultimately, our love triumphed over the toxic environment created by Nina and Hank. We realized that true happiness and fulfillment come from being surrounded by people who appreciate and uplift us, rather than those who seek to demean and belittle us. We embarked on a new chapter, leaving behind negativity and embracing the love and respect we always deserved. So there you have it, the tale of how my amazing parents turned the tables on my condescending in-laws. Our love flourished, and we found happiness and success together, free from the judgment and snobbery of others. Remember, it's not about wealth or status, it's about the love and support we give to one another. And sometimes, a little taste of sweet revenge can make the journey even more satisfying.
I was supposed to have pledged a lifetime of love to become husband and wife, but my marital life with David became a hell for me. His parents doted on him, and he prioritized them over me, making unreasonable demands. I refused to let them ruin my life. To punish everyone, I concocted a surprise. My name is Alyssa, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married to David for a year now. We work at the same company and often collaborate on projects. Although I don't have a college degree, I've been with the company longer and have more experience than him. Despite being a high school graduate, my good sales performance has earned me a decent salary, as our company values ability over academic background. David, who is capable and highly trusted by his colleagues, was a boyfriend I could be proud of. I fell for him and gladly accepted his proposal, and we happily became a married couple. But then my in-laws began to interfere in our relationship. One day, while visiting their house, my mother-in-law suddenly said to David, "Hey David, are you really okay with marrying Alyssa? You've always been good at both studying and sports, haven't you? Yet you chose someone like Alyssa." My father-in-law nodded in agreement. "Yeah, at first glance. She seems like an average young woman with nothing special about her." David responded, "It's fine. I love Alyssa." But my mother-in-law gave me a side glance that said otherwise. I felt humiliated but kept my composure to maintain a peaceful marital life, avoiding conflict with my in-laws as much as possible. On another occasion, my in-laws started complaining in front of me. "Hey David, are you really okay with your current workplace? Isn't it a place where even high school graduates like Alyssa can work?" David replied, "The pay is good, and I have good colleagues." His parents continued, "You're smart. There must be many other good jobs out there." I seethed inside but stayed silent, believing that responding would mean losing. I did my job well and sometimes even earned more than David. It was clear I didn't have a good impression of my in-laws, who judged based on academic background or appearance. However, they didn't physically bully me, and I didn't suffer much direct harm. David knew from the start that I was a high school graduate, and he always told me, "I love everything about Alyssa." I took pride in my achievements at a company that valued ability over academic background, and I believed David was on my side. However, after a while, an incident broke out. Out of nowhere, David began speaking of something unbelievable. "Hey, I've been thinking. I've decided to switch to a different job." "Wait, what? What are you talking about all of a sudden?" I asked, stunned. "I was talking to my parents and realized our company even hires high school grads like you, Alyssa," David said. "I had a college degree, so there must be a better job out there for me." "Are you serious? You're insulting both me and the company," I retorted. "But it's true, isn't it? There's no need for me to work at a job that even a high school graduate can do. Plus, my mom said she could introduce me to a job through someone she knows." "Stop it. We are blessed with a good work environment, and now you're saying something like this. You're nagging." I finally realized I'm not someone who should be stuck in a place like this. It was clear his parents had influenced him, and he convinced himself that he was too good for our company. The very next day, without discussing it with me, he submitted his resignation and left the company. Only a year into our marriage, my husband had quit the job where we met, without a second thought. He switched to a factory job his mother arranged, where his salary dropped to about half of what it was. The only advantage was that it was close to home, making commuting easier. About a week after starting the new job, he began to complain. "That guy, even though he never went past middle school, has the nerve to tell me what to do," David said, scattering his clothes about. "Wait, why are you so angry? If you make such a loud noise, it's going to bother the neighbors," I tried to calm him. "Shut up? Why do I, a university graduate, have to be bossed around by a low-level boss who's just a middle school graduate? You just started there. It can't be helped. He's your boss, right? I don't care. He can't even study, but he has the nerve to boss me around. Damn it. Who's the real problem here? What can a newcomer do without instructions from your boss? You chose to switch jobs, so bear with it a little. I know that already." Would he be able to continue at his current workplace? How long could he endure the situation? My attempts to soothe him only worsened his mood. Every day became a struggle to get him to work. My doubts were confirmed when he caused a major issue at the factory. "You broke the factory equipment," I exclaimed, shocked. My husband slammed his hand on the table. "It's not my fault. It's that Dan boss who pissed me off. But that doesn't mean you should break the factory equipment. That's absolutely unacceptable." What were you thinking? I had no choice. That guy was bossing me around even though I'm a university graduate. His boss, who had only graduated from middle school, had criticized David for not working seriously. In response, David insulted his boss's academic qualifications. The fault was clearly with David, so everyone sided with the boss. Enraged, David went into a violent rage, damaging part of the conveyor belt and stopping the production line. This led to his immediate firing and a large claim for damages. Since it was a factory his parents had introduced, they had to pay the damages as well. As a result, David lost all his savings, and even his parents' retirement fund seemed to vanish instantly. "My parents are struggling right now, but they're moving into this apartment next week," David said. I let out an absurd gasp of surprise. "Living together? I never heard about this," I protested. "You're my wife, right? Just listen and keep quiet. This is a done deal, that it?" With those words, David left the room, slamming the door. A few days later, my in-laws actually moved into our home. I thought it was a joke, but it became my harsh reality. Living together was absolutely impossible, so I confronted them directly. "Father-in-law, mother-in-law, living together is a problem." "Shut up. It's your fault our son couldn't make it at the factory," my father-in-law snapped. "That's right. You neglected David's mental care, didn't you?" added my mother-in-law. "Wait a minute. How is this my fault?" I asked, bewildered. Can't you shut up? Our life is a mess because of you, they continued. That's right. If you had done things right, this wouldn't have happened. It's all your fault. So living together is natural, right? The logic is all messed up. Living together is impossible. Shut up. Our home was rented, and we've already terminated the lease. There's nowhere else to go, my father-in-law said. That's right. We have nowhere else to go other than here, echoed my mother-in-law. Despite moving in without permission, my in-laws had a lot to say. Furthermore, David began to insult me, egged on by his parents. Hey, Alyssa, I married you. You should be happy to be married to someone as excellent as me, shouldn't you? Forget about that. Can't you start looking for a job soon? It's hard on the household finances now that we're living together. What did you say? You're cheeky for a wife. Supporting your husband is a wife's duty. And supporting your husband's family is also a wife's duty, right? I'm getting sick of you spouting nonsense as if it makes sense, I muttered. Neither David nor my in-laws helped with household chores at all. I had a job too, so I couldn't make elaborate meals, and the cleaning inevitably got neglected, no matter what they said. I kept a cool attitude, saying, because it's hard on the household finances. If they weren't happy with it, they, who caused the situation, should do it. I maintained this attitude for several days until one day, David finally vented his frustration. Hey, what's with your attitude? You're lacking respect for me and my parents. Enough already. I work every day and do all the housework on top of that. You don't help at all but complain a lot. Huh? What's with that tone of voice? You don't seem to understand your place, do you? With that, David shoved divorce papers in my face. He had even kindly signed them. What is this? Can't you see? It's a divorce paper. Even a high school graduate can understand that, right? Are you serious? Of course. If you have complaints about me and my parents, then we're getting a divorce. Staring at the divorce papers, David spoke with a triumphant look. Let me tell you, even if you throw it away, it's useless. I have more prepared. Understand? If you don't want to be divorced, listen to what I say, you stupid high school graduate wife. In that moment, my rage burst forth. I couldn't stand to be with these people anymore. Since he went to the trouble of preparing it, I'd put it to good use. Clutching the divorce papers, I began to plot my revenge. First, I recorded the numerous insults from my husband and in-laws on a voice recorder. When my belongings were deliberately broken, I made sure to document that as evidence. By this time, David had started working odd jobs, but none of them lasted even a week. It was as if he had given up on our family. One day, as soon as David came home, he announced, "Oh man, I quit this job too because it was too boring." Huh, again? You have no right to complain to me, right? Yeah, Dad, Mom. My in-laws just nodded with smiles. This was a usual occurrence, but on this day, my father-in-law delivered the final blow. Speaking of which, I've quit too, David's father announced. What? Father-in-law? What are you talking about? That's what I'm saying. I've quit my job. I'm planning to live off you, Alyssa. Wait, what? You see, my son is too brilliant and prideful to work under those who only graduated middle or high school. We're counting on you, Alyssa, a high school graduate, to work hard. Yeah, let's count on our lowly educated Alyssa to work hard, right, dear? What were they even saying? They intended to live off not their son, but their daughter-in-law. I couldn't stand it any longer. With my father-in-law and David's simultaneous resignation, I knew there was no point in spending any more time with this family. I finally decided to put all my plans into action. The first thing I did was sign a contract for a new apartment. It wasn't for all of us to move in, of course. It was a new place for me alone. However, I needed time to move without my husband and in-laws noticing, so I gifted them a 5-day trip to give me time to pack. Upon receiving the trip tickets, my mother-in-law was thrilled. A trip? Oh, Alyssa, you do have a knack for these things every once in a while. I owe a lot to you all, I replied with a forced smile. But are you sure, Alyssa? You can come with us if you like. No, I have work. Please enjoy yourselves without any interruptions." "Oh, really? Well, then we'll take you up on your offer and have a blast," she exclaimed. When the three left for their trip in high spirits, I carried out my planned move. During this time, I shipped my husband and in-laws' belongings to a weekly apartment I had booked and canceled the lease on our current apartment. I bore all these expenses. It was a painful outlay, but I considered it a necessary expense for my revenge. A few days later, my husband, who must have returned from the trip, called me. "Hey, what the hell is going on? I can't unlock the door." Smirking at the sound of my husband's frantic voice, I calmly responded, "I suppose I've already canceled that apartment." "What? Canceled? What are you talking about? Explain properly." "For now, I've stored all of our belongings in a weekly apartment nearby. Feel free to do as you wish from there." "What? What does that mean? You're always doing as you please. If you get too cocky, you'll pay for it later." "Are you threatening me? Should I call the police?" I asked, maintaining my composure. "Dan it!" My husband cursed. "How dare you, my foolish wife?" "Oh, I'm not your wife anymore." I dropped the bombshell. "What? To prevent any legal issues later, I've already completed the divorce proceedings." "What? Such a selfish act. You think it's acceptable." Taking a deep breath, I spoke firmly into my phone. "Sorry, but I don't need your permission. You've made fun of me for being a high school graduate long enough, and now you've quit your jobs to become dependent on me. I'm done with you. Enjoy your family life without me." "Hey, you must be kidding. I didn't really mean to divorce. Why should I listen to you at this point? We're strangers now. I don't care what happens to you at all. Please wait. You've enjoyed looking down on people, haven't you? I can easily imagine your struggles, and it makes me laugh. Go as low as you can with your family, you trash," I said, and promptly hung up the phone. After that, David kept badgering me with phone calls, but I ignored them all. Later, David and my in-laws caused a ruckus at the entrance of the apartment building, dramatically damaging part of the mailbox, which ended up becoming a police matter. They were taken away and ultimately asked to pay for the damages to the mailbox, adding to their debts. Truly, they are a hopeless family. The lease for the weekly apartment where I had set their belongings is about to expire. Since they do not know my new address, they can't rely on me. I can't help but wonder how David, who quit his job at the same time as his father, and his stay-at-home mother are going to survive from here on out. To make matters worse, my in-laws have even canceled the lease on their rented family home. I can almost see them sinking into a bottomless swamp. I can't help but admire my well-executed plan. I don't know how they're going to survive from here on out, and frankly, I don't care. But it's clear their future isn't bright. They brought this upon themselves. On the other hand, I am living carefree in my new home alone. Being able to spend my time leisurely without anyone bothering me is the ultimate bliss. For the time being, I don't think I'll be living with anyone else. From now on, I plan to thoroughly enjoy my time free of any worries.
I'm Verity, 32, and I had been living with my husband of 5 years, Bernard, when everything started to fall apart. Initially, things were wonderful between us, but that changed once Bernard got a promotion. He became cocky and arrogant, and I noticed him pulling away from me. I confided in my mother-in-law, whom I trust deeply, about the situation. "I really don't know what's wrong with him," I said. "Have you tried talking to him about it?" she asked. "Yes, many times, but he always brushes it off and acts like everything's fine. When I suggest stricter measures like going to a couples counselor, he gets really angry." Oh goodness, that doesn't sound like my precious Bernard. Maybe because you coddle him too much and those rose-colored glasses prevent you from seeing the truth, I thought but didn't say out loud. Things continued to deteriorate after his promotion. A few months of enduring his insufferable behavior led to a shocking discovery. One day, while cleaning the bedroom, I noticed Bernard's phone dangerously close to the edge of the bedside table. As I moved it, a text from someone named Pizza Hut popped up. Curious, I opened the message and found a series of horrifying texts and inappropriate pictures. Bernard was cheating on me. Overwhelmed, I heard heavy footsteps approaching. I quickly locked the phone and put it back. Bernard entered the room. Verity, where the hell are my socks? They're here, darling. I was just tidying up, I replied, trying to keep my composure. Why do you look like you've just seen a monster? Because in that moment, I had. The man standing in front of me was no longer my sweet Bernard, but an unrecognizable beast who had shattered my life. Too weak to confront him, I muttered something about period cramps, and he left. That night, I sobbed into my pillow, my cheating husband sleeping peacefully beside me. Though deeply saddened, I was also enraged. How could he cheat on me after everything? I held on to this anger and decided to expose him. Early the next morning, before Bernard woke up, I gathered all the evidence I needed from his phone. His mistress's name was Rita. I sent everything to my phone, put his phone back, and waited for his mother, Deborah, to arrive. Deborah arrived shortly after Bernard left for work. When I showed her the evidence, she was as horrified and disgusted as I had been. After a moment of shock, she spoke up. We need to do something about this. He's absolutely lost it. I'm so hurt, Deborah. I know, my dear, but we'll get through this. I'll call him right now. Deborah called Bernard and put him on speaker. Bernard, this better be some sick prank, because if any of this is true, I don't know how I will look you in the face again. Mom, slow down. What are you talking about? Who the hell is Rita? The silence that followed confirmed everything. He had been cheating on me for quite a while. You better get back home right this instant. We need to discuss this face to face. Deborah hung up, and for the next 30 minutes I was inconsolable. Bernard finally arrived home, bringing Rita with him. What is the meaning of this? Is this the wench? Don't call her that, Mom. I love her. What'd you just say? Yes, Verity, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but now is as good a time as any. I am in love with Rita. She makes me happy. I've realized I am at a higher status than my past life. To put it lightly, you're like the older version of a gaming console, and Rita is like the 5 pounds. Bernard, what are you saying? Do you know what you've put Verity through? And you, how dare you get with a married man? Have you no shame? Well, Mom, I believe that we're soulmates, Rita declared. He's in love with me, and I'm in love with him. We're going to start a family together. Oh, so you think you're going to change this man? Newsflash, honey, a cheater will always be a cheater. Based on what he's just said, he will always be searching for something bigger, better, and newer. You're not special, sweetie. Take my advice and leave now before things get worse. You're young, you still have your life ahead of you. Don't tie yourself to a man like this. Enough. Bernard interrupted. I know you're hurt, Verity, but it's not my fault you let yourself go. You have to understand, as a man I have needs, and Rita fulfills them. I guess this all goes without saying, but I want a divorce. As if my heart couldn't shatter anymore, it miraculously did. I was too stunned to respond. I started to zone out of this dreadful situation, but I could hear barely audible shouting between Deborah and Bernard in the background. Amid the chaos, my phone buzzed with a text from my family lawyer. A great uncle of mine had recently passed away, and part of his will indicated that once the inheritance was properly divided among the appropriate individuals, the actual amount would be disclosed to the recipients. Uncle Henry had always been dramatic, even in death. The text read, Dear Verity, as always, I hope you're well. As you know, your great Uncle Henry has left some inheritance money for you, but unfortunately, it's going to take a bit longer than expected to process the proper funds. Some of your family members are arguing about who gets to keep what. Please call for further clarification if needed. Take care. Knowing my crazy and toxic family, I highly doubted there'd be any money left for me. I was always last place, and the same rang true for my failed marriage. I zoned back in to hear more commotion. Verity, are you even listening? Deborah asked, exasperated. What is there to listen to? Bernard has shown us who he is, right? He doesn't want to be with me anymore, right? That's that. I can't fight for someone who won't fight for me, for us. But I will say this, Bernard, by the time your karma is finished with you, you will wish you'd never been born. I'm done here. With that, I gathered up whatever strength I had left, went to my room to pack some of my things, and walked out the front door. As I was leaving, Deborah called after me, assuring me that everything would be fixed. Bless her heart, she still believed that part of her sweet baby boy was still alive. But all I saw was a hollow shell of a man. For the next couple of weeks, I rented cheap motel rooms while Bernard began processing the divorce papers. He had friends who could help speed up the process. He acknowledged that this was hard for me and wanted to expedite things so that I didn't have to suffer any longer. Sounded to me like a guilty conscience. By this point, I was so drained I had cried all my tears. Approximately 6 months after the debacle, Bernard and I were officially divorced. Surprisingly, the process was relatively smooth because we were agreeable about most things. Bernard, being the selfish person he was, wanted to keep most of his money, knowing I had nothing to my name as a housewife. However, I didn't desire any of that money because it had turned him into such a selfish and evil man. Well, I guess that settles it then. It was nice knowing you, Verity. I hope you take care of yourself, Bernard said with an air of finality. I hope you rot in hell where you belong. I have no desire to keep in contact with you, so please refrain from doing so. Have the day you think you deserve, I retorted, stomping off. I was still jaded and hurting, but I was picking myself back up again. While I was still legally married to Bernard, I had used the money in our shared account to kickstart a small business I had always dreamed of, a little cafe that I began to rent. It was a way for me to make money since I knew I would be getting little to nothing from the divorce settlement. As I walked to my apartment complex, which I had started renting shortly after launching the business, I received an email from George, my family lawyer. I was very confused by what I read. Dear Verity, my apologies once again for the awful marital situation you're going through. But I have some good news to share with you. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. 3 hours later, George and I met at my quaint little cafe to discuss the important news he couldn't tell me over the phone. Hello, George. I hope you're well. Hey, Verity. I can tell you're hurting, so I won't take up much of your time. Let me cut to the chase. You've got the inheritance. What? What did you say? You heard me right. You've got the inheritance. I'm so sorry it took so long to finalize. Your great Uncle Henry left most of the money to you. Here's a letter from him that you need to read now that all the conditions have been met. The letter read as follows. My dear Verity, I know life has been unkind to you. You have always been put in last place by both friends and family, but I have decided that enough is enough. No more will you be subject to pain and humiliation. Please accept this inheritance money and use it to ameliorate your life in the best way you can. Knowing your toxic family members, they most likely won't be happy with the distribution of funds. But I don't care. All I care about is your health and well-being. If you're reading this now, you know that all the money you are about to receive is wholly yours. You won't have to go through any troubles or negotiations with anyone. I wanted to exempt you from this messy process, which is why you are receiving this money now. I know you will do wonderful things. All my love, your great Uncle Henry. By the time I finished reading the letter, I was sobbing. Some customers got up and left due to the scene I was making, but I didn't care. I was overwhelmed with joy. It was so refreshing to hear good news after months of crying and wondering why all of this had happened to me. How much is it? I asked, still shaking with emotion. It's $170,000, George replied. I gasped. That was a lot of money, more than enough to help me continue to grow and expand my business. Finally, things were looking up. I thanked George profusely for his loyalty and kindness, and he went on his way. That night, I called Deborah to tell her everything. You said the amount is how much? She asked, disbelief evident in her voice. Yup, you heard me right, Deborah. We were still keeping in touch despite everything. I trusted her, at least for a while, but what she did next was completely deplorable. I woke up the next morning to a slew of angry texts from none other than Bernard. Less than 24 hours after telling him not to contact me again, here he was, contacting me. Against my better judgment, we decided to meet up to discuss whatever it was that was pressing him. A part of me still had hopes that things would change. We met at my cafe. So this is the infamous cafe. It's cute, I guess, Bernard remarked, looking around with a disdainful air. What do you want, Bernard? Haven't you taken enough from me? Let's cut to the chase. Half of that money is mine. What? My mom told me everything. She told me about the inheritance money that finally came. Talk about good timing, am I right? But anyways, we need that money. You must have lost your mind if you think I'm going to give you anything. Besides, don't you make enough money as it is? What exactly is your obsession with me? Why didn't you care when you were breaking my heart and didn't even bat an eye? What are you talking about? You knew I was a wreck. You were literally behind the wheel for all the turmoil you caused me. You watched me suffer. What else do you want from me? When will you be satisfied? When you see me in my coffin? Enough. I don't have time for this. Just give me my money and I'll be on my way. I need the money for my wedding to Rita. What exactly makes you think you're entitled to this money? Are you sick in the head? The inheritance situation was happening while we were still married, so technically, that money belongs to me. I paused, feeling embarrassed. I didn't know the technicalities like that. Was something like that possible? So give me my money. If I'm ever going to give you any money, we'll need a lawyer present. I've heard what you've said. Go home. I will contact you in the morning. Bernard begrudgingly left, angry because he couldn't control me any longer. If we'd still been married, I would have given him my kidney if he asked. But now I couldn't even look this man in the eye without feeling disgusted. In the morning, I called George and the lawyers who were helping us out with a divorce. I explained my situation, and everyone agreed in unison that what Bernard was doing wasn't logical or right. The inheritance money was finalized after signing the divorce papers, and any money that came my way was mine, which was exactly what I thought. Bernard tried to gaslight me into believing that I owed him anything. Angrily, I drove to the house that I used to call home for 5 years and knocked on the door. Eventually, someone answered. Oh hell. Move. I'm not here for you. I'm here for your evil fiancé. What is the meaning of this? Don't you dare come into my house and cause a ruckus. Oh, you mean our house? The house that we built together? You have a lot of nerve treating me the way you do, as if I wasn't good to you. I genuinely believe you should get your head checked because there are some screws loose. Where is your mother? At that moment, like clockwork, Deborah came out of the kitchen. Now, what's all this noise I'm hearing? Deborah, how could you do this to me? What do you mean? You told your trifling son about the inheritance money. What for? Don't speak to me about my son that way. I told him because, well, I believed that perhaps we could partake in some of that money. I should have known where Bernard got his cheating habit from. I guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree. All of you are sick. You're trying to siphon money from me. I'm struggling to keep afloat, and something good has happened to me for once in my life, and you people want to take that away from me. Well, too bad. I went on to explain to the bumbling fools that the money I got was completely mine, and that because the divorce papers were signed. There was no way for any of these people to get their grubby hands on my money. Of course, Bernard didn't like this news at all, and he proceeded to go on a little rampage, yelling and cursing and even breaking things. I saw his true colors because you won't believe what happened next. Bernard got into his car and drove off. I thought we were done arguing and that he went somewhere to cool off. But when I arrived at my cafe, I found it had been vandalized. The windows were broken, and most of the furniture was damaged. I immediately knew who did this and called the perpetrator. Bernard, really? You vandalized my shop? It had to be done. You aren't giving us the money. Maybe now you'll cooperate. I know you don't have security cameras, so good luck trying to press charges. Wow. Just wow. I cut the call and proceeded to call my good friend George to assess the situation. George began to laugh. We got him now, Verity. What do you mean? He's ruined everything. He's ruined my life, and even if I fix it, he'll come back again and again. Don't you see, Verity? We can sue him for this, and with that being said, we can also renegotiate the terms of your divorce settlement. But I don't have evidence. Yes, you do. There's always evidence. And sure enough, there certainly was. I discovered that the cameras that came with the building were still working. I was under the impression that they weren't functional, and I caught Bernard's vandalism very clearly. I brought this evidence to George to collate and compose a case against Bernard. Thankfully, our case was well received, and because of the nature of our tumultuous relationship, as well as the collection of all the verbal and emotional abuse that had happened to me, I was highly favored, and the judge determined that I would be receiving $20,000 from Bernard in damages. This obviously made Bernard fill up with rage, and he proceeded to appeal this, but time and time again, his appeal was rejected. Now that I have all this money, I can properly cater to my cafe and allow it to grow and expand. The last I heard of Bernard, Rita, and Deborah was that they were constantly quarreling and bickering, and word on the curb is that Bernard has been spotted several times with a young and attractive blonde woman on his arm. Hi everyone, my name is Carrie, and this is the story of how I dealt with my horrible mother-in-law. To be honest, I'm not solely responsible for her getting kicked out. It was actually her own antics that led to her being thrown out. She almost ended up dealing with the cops if I hadn't been the bigger person. My mother-in-law, Elena, is simply an insane person. She's one of those women who hate other women being around. Unfortunately for her, she ended up having a daughter just after her son. Adding to her misery, her son Keith ignored her protests and married an ambitious woman like me. From the beginning, Elena was incredibly rude and judgmental towards me. Keith and I met through a dating app, which Elena found outrageous. She said, "Why the hell did you pick up a woman from a dating app? You know girls of this type usually like to sleep around and cheat on their partners." "Mom, what is wrong with you? You cannot say these things about Carrie. She's a sweet girl and doesn't deserve your hate." Keith defended me. "Elena, I have no intentions of sleeping around or cheating on Keith. I'm in love with him, and we are actually thinking about getting engaged soon," I said. "Oh my God, Keith, is this true?" Elena asked. "Yes, Mom, I'm planning on popping the question soon. Carrie knows it's coming, but the rest is a surprise," Keith replied. "Must be after your money, Keith. Why else would she hurry you into marriage? I'm telling you, Keith, this girl is not good for you," Elena insisted. "I'm not a gold digger, Elena. I earn very well for myself. In fact, I earn much more than Keith right now. My field pays a lot, so I'll be comfortable for the rest of my life," I explained. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say. Elena became even worse after learning that I earned more. She often berated me and hinted that I would be a bad wife, saying working women are neglectful and disloyal. I had no idea why she found problems in everything I said. So I decided to ask Keith's sister, Maxine, about Elena. "Maxine, I have no idea why your mom hates me so much. No matter how many times I prove her wrong, she finds something to complain about," I said. "Mom is like that, Carrie. She thinks girls are either gold diggers or useless second-class citizens. It boggles my mind why she thinks like that, even after being a woman herself. She didn't even spare me. Mom neglected me all the time and didn't help me with college, but she paid in full for Keith," Maxine explained. Now, Maxine, you don't need to demonize Mom. Yes, you had a problematic relationship with her. But that doesn't mean she hates women," Keith interjected. "You've always been blind towards her, Keith. I don't blame you. She was always a good mom to you. She loved and spoiled you. You didn't see what she did to me," Maxine retorted. "Keith, I think Maxine might be right to some extent. I wasn't present when you two were teenagers, but I can see what Elena is like. Plus, I've noticed her dismissing Maxine's achievements," I added. "There's no use trying to defend me, Carrie. Keith has always been biased about Mom. Watch out, Carrie. If Mom turns on you and wreaks havoc on your life, Keith might just take her side instead," Maxine warned. Maxine and Keith got into a verbal spat after this, arguing about Elena's treatment and favoritism. It was clear to me that Keith was somewhat disillusioned by Elena's motherly behavior towards him. She was actually a very toxic woman, and I hated being around her. Maxine's words stayed with me. After Keith and I got married, I understood that she wasn't far from the truth. We should have started our married life as a couple, but Keith ended up bringing Elena along. When we announced our engagement, Elena quit her job and demanded that we take care of her. She said she was getting old, and it was time we took care of her. I never liked her, but I didn't say no, mostly because Keith wanted to take care of his mom. I lost my parents in college, so I didn't have the heart to turn him down. Elena started living with us, and she quickly became a living nightmare. She constantly ordered me around and did nothing all day. After I returned from work, she would say, "What took you so long, Carrie? Have you forgotten that you are a married woman? You should have been here sooner. There are plenty of house chores left. Who will do everything?" "Elena, I had a late meeting and couldn't get home sooner. I can't leave before completing my work in the office," I explained. "And what about the work at home? Do you expect me to act like your servant and do it for you?" she snapped. "I will do everything now. Keith will help out. It's not a big deal," I reassured her. "Mom, you don't have to shout at her. We will do everything together. It doesn't take time when two people do it together," Keith chimed in. "Absolutely not, Keith. Men don't do house chores. Your father never helped me, and this is Carrie's job. If she can't balance work and house chores, she needs to leave her job or get a divorce. Yep, that's my mother-in-law for you. She hated everything I did, and I guess she hated my mere existence. Whenever I tried to talk to Keith about her, he would shut me down, saying, "Mom is old, and she has some really conservative ideas. You don't have to take her seriously, she means no harm." Are you kidding me, Keith? You're not the one on the receiving end of her insults. It's humiliating and exhausting. I can't take her words anymore. Relax, you're overreacting. Mom can be cranky sometimes. I'll try to talk to her about her behavior. You have to be a little patient with her. Maxine was right. Keith rarely took my side. Yes, he defended me against Elena at times, but mostly he asked me to compromise. I was getting tired of his behavior. What's worse was that I was paying a huge chunk of the household expenses because Keith was supporting Elena with his small salary. I felt disrespected and humiliated even after doing so much for Elena. The worst of Elena's behavior was yet to come. A little over a year after we got married, both Keith and I found job opportunities that would significantly increase our pay. We both got shortlisted and needed to go through an interview process. Unfortunately, Keith's interview was delayed, but mine was scheduled soon. Elena absolutely hated it. She said, "Carrie, you seriously can't be thinking of taking the job. That would not be good at all. You don't need to go to the interview." Why would I not take the job? It would raise my salary significantly. I will finally have the job of my dreams. You are a married woman, Carrie. You can't think about your job all the time. If you get the job, you will earn way more than Keith. How can you even think of earning more than your husband? That is so disrespectful. Mom, that is ridiculous. I'm so proud that Carrie has an amazing offer. I want her to get the job. This is her dream job. Don't be so naive, Keith. She will start to financially abuse you. She will lose all respect for you and treat you poorly. Plus, she will try to get rid of me. Don't let her go for this interview. I'm no one to stop her, Mom. I'm telling you that I don't mind all these things. You are overreacting a little. Leave her be, Mom. Elena, I have had enough of you treating me like this. It can't happen again. What I do with my life is none of your business. You don't have the right to comment on it. Elena never backed down from her demands. She tried to do everything in her power to dissuade me from attending the interview. She even suggested that I should skip the interview to support Keith since he couldn't attend his. As my interview date approached, I became very careful. I knew Elena would try to mess things up. On the day of the interview, I saw Elena walk into our study right after I left the room with my CV. Back then, I thought nothing of it. I was excited for my interview and because Keith had finally gotten a call for his interview, which was scheduled for the same day. Keith didn't tell Elena because he wanted it to be a surprise when he got the job. However, things came crashing down when I came home after my interview. Keith looked super sad. Keith, what's wrong? Why do you look so sad? Did something happen at the interview? I asked. Carrie, I didn't get the job. Just look at my damn CV. They took one look at it and rejected me. What are you talking about, Keith? You have the perfect CV. There's no way they were not impressed. Keith handed me his CV. I was shocked. It wasn't his CV at all. It had my name and gender written on it, but everything mentioned in the CV was wrong. It painted me in a bad light and didn't contain a single word of my actual achievements. I had no idea who made this or how it got mixed with Keith's CV. I could see why bringing in something like this could create a bad impression and result in rejection. Keith was devastated. I don't understand this, Carrie. How the hell did this happen? This is not your CV either. It has a bunch of awful things written on it. It can't be that I took yours instead. No, you didn't take mine, Keith. I had an original CV for the interview. That's how I got the job. If I had taken the one you have, he would never have given me the job. This is so bizarre, Carrie. I'm devastated that I lost my job because of this stupid thing. I need to know how this happened. It's killing me inside. Seeing Keith in this mental state absolutely crushed me. It was true that Keith was looking forward to the job, and it pained him to lose it. I was also confused about the fake CV Keith had. Then it clicked. It must have been Elena who had tampered with Keith's CV. She had no idea Keith had an interview. She was trying to sabotage mine and failed. I was filled with anger, but I kept my cool. I needed to show Keith what Elena was really like. So I said, Keith, I think you should ask Elena about this. I'm sure she will have some interesting information for you. What do you mean, Carrie? What does Mom have to do with this? Well, I'm sure you remember how she didn't want me getting the job. I have a feeling she was trying to get my CV replaced with a fake one to destroy my chances. No, no, no. Mom would never do that. She didn't even know I had an interview today. Exactly, Keith. She didn't know you had the interview. If she had known, she would have been more careful. I actually saw her sneaking into the office with a file in her hand. By then, I already had my CV in my bag. I guess she looked at your file cover and thought it was mine. Keith was initially in denial, but as I recounted the morning's events, he began to get suspicious. It became apparent to him that Elena might have had something to do with it, so he decided to call her. Mom, come here right now. I need to speak to you. Keith, what's wrong? Why are you shouting? I'm coming. Did you mess with my CV? Answer me truthfully. What? No, no. Why would I do that? What CV are you even talking about? I don't understand. My CV, Mom. The one I was supposed to take to my interview today. What the hell did you do with it? I didn't do anything to your CV. I didn't even know you had an interview today. Carrie was the one who had an interview. Keith narrowed his eyes at Elena, connecting the dots. Mom, tell me the truth. Did you tamper with Carrie's CV? I already know what you did. There's no point in lying. I don't know what you're talking about. I would do no such thing. Keith, Elena knew I had an interview. She didn't replace your CV knowingly. She wanted to swap mine and ruin my interview. That's why your CV had my name and gender on it. Mom, do you have any idea what you've done? You freaking replaced my CV and cost me a good job. I failed the interview because of you. What the hell is wrong with you? It finally dawned on Elena that she had made a big mistake. Instead of swapping my file, she accidentally swapped Keith's. Realizing the gravity of her error, Elena started to cry. Keith, listen to me. This was all a mistake. I never intended to hurt you. I thought only Carrie had an interview today, and despite my warnings, she still tried to get the job. Why were you so upset about that, Keith? Your wife should not be earning more than you. If she does, no one will call you a man. She will take control of you and kick me out of your life. I did this for your good. You need to stop making yourself the martyr. Have you no shame? You cost your son his new job. He was so excited to join this company and you ruined his chance because you couldn't stand the idea of me having a better job than him. Shut up, Carrie. This is all your fault. If you hadn't tried to get a better job than Keith, I wouldn't have had to do this. There would have been no mishap. I told her not to go for the interview. I had no choice but to stop her. I never wanted to hurt you, Keith. I just wanted her to get rejected. Keith was already very pissed, and hearing Elena's nonsense just set him off even more. All the times you've manipulated and controlled us, it ends now. Keith had never been this angry at his mom. He finally understood how cruel and manipulative she could be. Keith snapped and tore into her. Enough is enough, Mom. Carrie and I brought you into our house and didn't take a penny from you. This is how you repay us? Have you no shame? Keith, Carrie is responsible for this. She constantly pushed my buttons and forced me to do these things. She wants me out of your life and is blaming everything on me. My wife selflessly took you in without any complaints. You are the one who started all the trouble. For months, I ignored her concerns and took your side. I protected you because you are my mom. Now I see I was wrong. I should have kicked you out sooner. How can you say that, Keith? You can't just kick out your mom. I know you don't mean this. You're just angry. I meant every word I said. Starting today, you are never welcome in our house again. We'll give you a month's notice. After that, I don't care where you go, but you won't live with us. No, Keith, you can't do this. Carrie, you've destroyed my life. You're taking away my son. I will never forgive you. Don't blame me, Elena. You brought this upon yourself. I did not instigate anything. You destroyed your relationship with Keith all by yourself. You must be so happy, Carrie. This is making you very happy, isn't it? I will not let you go, you witch. Elena lunged at me, grabbing my hair and pulling at my scalp. Keith intervened, pulling her off me and shouting at her. Keith went ballistic, and Elena started crying uncontrollably. He even threatened to press charges against her and kicked her out instantly. Elena didn't make a fuss, fearing that Keith would really call the police. She left the house in her car, and Keith started to calm down. But after his anger subsided, he immediately burst into tears. The frustration from the interview and with Elena made him break down. Through his tears, he said, "I'm so sorry, Carrie. I should have listened to you. I almost cost you your job because I didn't want to upset my mom. She just showed me how wrong I was about her. She attacked you, for God's sake. I don't know how to face you. I'm ashamed." "Don't say that, Keith. This is on Elena. Please don't blame yourself for what happened. I'm not happy about being validated at the expense of your job. I rather wish it was me who lost the interview." "No, I'm glad it was me. I was at fault. I should have kicked Mom out sooner. Don't worry, Carrie. After today, I won't ever allow Mom into our lives again. She is unhinged and toxic. I'm done with her." He promised me that Elena would never come near us again. He also told me that from now on, he would make more contributions to our household and cut Elena off financially. He realized it was unfair that I paid most of our bills while he supported someone who hated me. Keith wanted no contact with Elena anymore. Elena did try to get in touch with Keith, mostly begging for forgiveness. She initially sent me some threatening texts, but after I warned her about calling the police, she backtracked and begged for my forgiveness as well. Realizing she was in a deep hole, she stayed at Maxine's place. Maxine, aware of her antics, made her get a job to support herself, refusing to let her freeload. 8 months later, Maxine unceremoniously kicked out Elena after she pestered her to look after her. She was banned from Maxine's house, and her husband told Elena never to return. Elena was forced to move to a different state to live with a relative we barely know. I sent them a nice email about Elena's antics. Yes, I got the email through Maxine. She is a sweetheart. Our families have gotten much closer now that Elena is not around with her favoritism. Keith has also apologized to Maxine for disregarding her feelings. They are now very close, and we hang out regularly. Keith has enrolled in college to get a master's degree, which will help him get a better job in his field. With my current income, we are not having any trouble with money. Keith has always supported me in chasing my dreams, and it's only fair that I do the same for him. Elena's departure has actually made our lives better, and I hope it stays that way for years to come. Have you ever come across people who live like parasites? My name is Violet, and I've met 3 such individuals. My in-laws are the quintessential leeches. They never worked hard and always wanted more than they could afford. My husband Nate was the only successful member of his family and quickly became their cash cow. When I was dating Nate, I had no idea how bad things were. He warned me, but I refused to believe him. After we got married, I saw just how bad his parents, Ben and Donna, were. He also had a brother, Shane, who was the golden child and had never worked a day in his life. And he wasn't a teenager, he was a grown adult in his 20s. Because of my in-laws, Nate and I had to sacrifice a lot. Nate had a good job, while I was a stay-at-home wife. This was a joint decision since Nate's job was stressful, and he needed someone to take care of him. We were okay with this arrangement. However, money was always tight because his family took half of his salary. He paid their rent and utilities along with ours, yet they were never satisfied. "Nate, you need to put in more money towards us. It's not fair you spend so much on your wife. She can get a job if she wants money. We're a 3-person family. We deserve more. What you give us isn't enough. Do you want to see us in poor condition? He just wants to keep his useless housewife happy. I don't know why he pays for her. All she does is lounge around the house and look at her phone. I always told you not to spend so much on the wedding, yet you gave in to everything Violet said. Now you have no money for us. That's not what a good son would do," they would say. The emotional blackmail never stopped. Surprisingly, they never made Shane work. He stayed with them, and Nate had to pay for his expenses as well. I never complained because I knew family was important. However, I had no idea I would become a victim of my in-laws. It all started when Donna and Ben got sick one after another. The hospital bills racked up, and the entire situation was pretty stressful for all of us. One day, Nate came home from the office looking very upset. I could tell something was bothering him, and I started to feel concerned. "Nate, what's wrong?" "Please talk to me," I urged. "Violet, my parents are very sick. They're having a hard time managing on their own. I really don't know what to do. You know Shane will be of no help," Nate said. "Oh my God, how bad is it?" "I know they've been to the hospital, but I thought they were doing okay. They are better now, but they still need help around the house. Besides, their medical bills are still pending. I don't know how I will clear those bills and pay the rent for 2 houses at the same time. I'm so sorry, Nate. I can see it stressing you out. Please tell me if I can help in any way. I'm willing to help for your sake. I'm glad you asked, Violet. I was wondering if you would be willing to go live with them. It'll be for a short while. Our lease will end next month anyway. If we live with my parents, I can save rent on one house. That way, they'll get some help, and I'll be able to clear their medical bills too. There's a lot to think about, Nate, but if that's what makes you happy, we can go live with them. I should warn you though, if they treat me unfairly, I will leave. I will make sure they won't do that. You're already sacrificing a lot for them. This time, if they mess up, I won't take it lightly. Consider this the last favor you do for me. We set some ground rules, and Nate informed his parents about the arrangement. From what I could gather, they were pretty happy with everything. Instead of reassuring me, Nate's words set off alarm bells in my head. I prayed I wouldn't regret my decision, but my worst fears were soon realized. With everything set, Nate and I packed up and moved in with my in-laws. We used their spare guest room as our bedroom. Shane made some noise about needing the room for his personal reasons, but Nate shut that down quickly. His parents were surprisingly warm and welcoming, which I suspected was because they wanted to stay in Nate's good graces. However, things took a drastic turn as soon as Nate left for the office. As soon as he was gone, my in-laws pounced on me with a long list of chores. I had moved in with them to help out, but I found myself doing everything on my own. I did their laundry, cleaning, cooking, dishes, mowing the lawn, fixing things, and driving them to places. Ben and Donna just had diabetes and recovered quickly, but they acted as if they were paralyzed. I was okay with doing the work for Ben and Donna because they were getting old, and I didn't have the heart to make sick people work. However, everyone expected me to do Shane's work as well. Shane did nothing all day. He got up late, demanded I make his favorite breakfast, stayed in his room and littered all over, and only came down for meals. Even during meals, he complained. He never did it at dinner because he knew Nate would crack down on him. When Nate wasn't around, Shane always said, "Why'd you cook this crap every day? You know I don't eat this. Who the hell likes veggies anyway? It's a balanced meal, Shane. There's meat in it as well. You can ignore the veggies if you want. I don't like this at all. Go make me something else. I feel like having lasagna today. And for dinner, make me a steak. Do you really expect me to stop and make lasagna right now? It will take hours. I just finished cooking 2 meals today and still have to prepare for dinner. Why don't you make yourself something? How dare you talk to me like that? I don't cook. I'm a man. Women should do the cooking. My brother is looking after you for a reason. It's your job to feed and work for his family." "No, I'm only responsible for taking care of Nate. All this is extra. Besides, Ben and Donna are sick, but you're fit as a fiddle. You need to help out more." Hearing this, Shane called out to his parents in a classic man-child fashion. It was so ridiculous that I would have laughed if I weren't mentally and physically exhausted. Ben and Donna came running, and they sure appeared fine when defending their son. They heard Shane's tale and said, "Violet, how dare you tell my son to help? This is your job as a housewife. Nate didn't marry you to be a parasite in this family. Yes, you have some nerve staying in my house and telling my son to do your job. He's a man and doesn't have to do feminine work. That's what you're here for. I am not your servant. I am already doing a lot for you guys. The least he can do is make his own meals if he doesn't like mine." Shane literally does nothing but sit around. "What he does is none of your business. Now go make him lasagna. If that's what my baby wants, he will get it. There is no room for arguments." "I don't want it anymore." Shane sneered. "I changed my mind, Violet. Give me some money for takeout to make up for insulting me today." I was furious but knew arguing would be pointless. I reluctantly took money out of my pocket and handed it to Shane. It was a bad day for me and I wanted to cry, but I held back. Instead, I reassured myself that my time would come. Unknown to everyone, I was already collecting evidence of their mistreatment. I had recordings on my phone and proof that Shane regularly asked me for money. I wanted to try and salvage the situation, not wanting to stress Nate more than he already was. He worked hard to take care of us all, and I wanted to support him in return. Somehow, I managed to live with them for 6 months. Their behavior never changed. Instead, their demands escalated day by day. Shane still wasn't working or contributing in any way. Nate constantly berated him for being unemployed, but Shane never talked back to him. However, when Nate was gone, Shane took his anger out on me. He made me clean his room, cook meals, and do his laundry. If I refused, he would complain to Ben and Donna, and the three of them would corner me and verbally abuse me until I gave in. Slowly, I was hitting rock bottom. The worst thing happened just when the 6th month came to an end. It was a horrible July with severe thunderstorms, and Nate had to be away on a business trip that weekend. Our area was on high alert for tornadoes. Everyone was worried, and even Nate had a hard time being away from us. Just as I finished preparing lunch, Shane came down from his room and said, You made that food again? Why can't you just follow my damn instructions? Donna and Ben are both diabetic, Shane. We can't have rich and oily food every day for health reasons. How many times do I have to tell you to make my meal separately? You are such a lazy witch. I wonder what Nate ever saw in you. Since you don't want to cook, you could go get me McDonald's. Are you insane? There's a tornado alert. Do you really want me to go out in this weather? Don't be dramatic. It's not that serious. Besides, this is your job. You need to get me something or make me a new meal from scratch. Oh, and my room is dirty. You've been slacking off. You better go clean it. Absolutely not. I'm not doing your work anymore. I already have a lot on my plate with stocking groceries and preparing for the storms. From now on, if you don't like anything, you can cook your own food. You are a grown man, so clean your own room. What did you just say? Just wait till Mom and Dad hear about this. You'll pay for talking to me like this. Shane, as usual, called Ben and Donna. At that moment, I knew things were about to hit the fan. So I got my phone out and started recording. Ben and Donna came down, and Shane cried to them about how badly I was treating him. You have no shame, Violet. We've told you multiple times that our son won't do a woman's job. You never listened to us. You're an ungrateful witch wasting Nate's money, and said. I always knew this little witch was a leech. See, I was right. How dare you mistreat my son in my own house? We've been hosting you, and you have no gratitude, Donna added. I'm tired of working like a dog for you guys. All you three do is sit and complain. There is just so much a person can take. Besides, I'm working enough for this household. You are the ones living like parasites. How dare you insult us and call us parasites? It's Nate's duty to look after his parents, and you, as the daughter-in-law, are responsible for taking care of us, Ben retorted. Telling her won't work anymore. She's gone too far. We need to teach her a lesson, Ben. Since this is our house, Violet, you are no longer welcome here. If you can't respect us and do your job, you need to get out, Donna declared. Yes, Mom, Dad, kick her out. That will teach her not to disrespect us in our house, Shane chimed in. With that, Donna grabbed me by the arm and dragged me towards the door. Before I could react, she pushed me out and locked the door behind her. I fell on the wet grass, scratching my hands and knees. I immediately got up and started banging on their door. No, you can't kick me out. What is wrong with you? There's a tornado coming, and the thunderstorm is already here. You can't keep me outside. Stop shouting, Violet. It'll be of no use. This will be the perfect lesson for you. Now you will know what it feels like not to have a roof over your head, Donna shouted from inside. This is inhumane. You need to let me in. I can't stay out in the storm. It's not safe. I'm already drenched to the bone. Yell all you want, but we'll protect our son first. A girl like you needs to know her place. Now go away before I call the police. I continued banging on their door and crying, but they just turned and left for their rooms. Within seconds, I was completely soaked and started shivering from the cold. The storm was already in full force, and I was scared for my life. Just when I had given up hope, a neighbor lady approached me and told me to come with her. I followed her to her house and felt a wave of relief wash over me. She was an old woman who lived next door and had heard the entire ordeal. She decided to help me. As soon as I reached her house, I broke down in sobs. I knew it was time to finally stand up for myself. The neighbor lady gave me fresh clothes and comforted me while I cried on her sofa. As the storm died down, rage boiled within me, and my resolve grew stronger. I immediately called Nate once I had a better signal and said, Nate, there's something I need to tell you. What happened, Violet? Is everything okay? Has the storm passed? I saw it on the news. Yes, the tornado didn't hit, but there was a bad thunderstorm. The weather has calmed down now. Then what's wrong, dear? Tell me immediately. I'm getting anxious. Your parents kicked me out today. I'm at the neighbor's house, calling you from here. What? That's impossible. Why would they do that? I'm so sorry, Nate. I tried my best to help your family, but they've been verbally abusing me and overworking me. They kicked me out because I refused to remake a meal for Shane or get takeout for him. That's insane. How could they just kick you out like that? Don't believe me? I'll send you some videos. You can watch them and decide. I hung up and sent the videos to Nate. Additionally, the neighbor lady called him and told him what she had witnessed herself. There was a long silence before Nate told me he would be back soon. Meanwhile, my in-laws didn't try to contact me until an hour after I talked to Nate. They were peacefully staying at the house and didn't even care if I was safe. However, when they started blowing up my phone, they called me back into the house. I went there for a final confrontation and said, "What do you want now? After kicking me out, you had no regard for my safety. What's the point of calling me back here? We made a mistake, Violet. Things happen sometimes. We are family. Don't be mad at us. We'll apologize to you. Yes, we can just apologize and move on. Even Shane here will say sorry. Let's just put it past us." "Oh, I'm sorry, Violet. This will never happen again. We were being stupid," Shane added. "Wow, that's some change in your behavior. What brought this on, may I ask?" "Nate called us today. He was pretty upset. He said he will look past this if you forgive us." "Yeah, if you don't, then he will stop supporting us. You know we are sick and old. Please don't hold a grudge. Without Nate's support, we will be homeless." "Good, because that's what you deserve. People who have no empathy for others should not be shown mercy. I will tell Nate that I won't live with you three anymore, and I don't accept your apology. What Nate does after this is completely his choice." As soon as I said that, the trio started to beg and plead for mercy. They kept repeating that they were sorry and it wouldn't happen again. Shane even had the audacity to say that kicking me out was a small joke that went too far and that holding grudges was childish. I ignored them, gathered some of my things, and returned to the neighbor's house. I also called Nate and told him that I would never forgive my in-laws again. Nate took my decision very seriously. He flew back a day early and went straight to my in-laws. When he returned, he told me he wasn't going to support them anymore. He was tired of them treating me unfairly, and enough was enough. Nate decided to stop sending them money for rent or medical bills and wouldn't give them any allowance. Shane would be completely responsible for Donna and Ben. How he would do that was none of our business. Nate and I started looking for a new place. We got lucky because one of his colleagues was renting out one of his apartments. We jumped at the offer and began moving our things the next day. Nate also profusely thanked the neighbor lady for protecting me when he couldn't. Suffice to say, we will continue to keep in touch with her. Meanwhile, Ben, Donna, and Shane thought Nate was bluffing. They asked for forgiveness but never actively tried to improve their situation. So the following month, when Nate didn't send the money, my in-laws were in big trouble. They started blowing up our phones and even called me horrible things. Nate and I simply blocked them. Any relative who felt sorry for them was sent proof of their misbehavior, and that shut them up real quick. It's been a long time since then. Nate no longer sends them any money. Shane was forced to work in a warehouse and earns very little. The three of them live in a small camper, and things are not looking good for them. Nate and I, on the other hand, have finally put a down payment on our dream home. I'm also currently pregnant and expecting our first child. We are looking forward to our new life, away from the leeches that are my in-laws.